restrictions at the ballot box. The Atlanta Braves, who were going to be hosting the game, saying that they are, quote, deeply disappointed, adding that they had hoped our city could use this event as a platform to enhance the discussion. So let's have a discussion now. Hall of Fame broadcaster Bob Costas is here, CNN contributor. Bob, I love having these conversations with you. You always give us such nuance and such great information here, and such a great perspective. This is really a huge decision from Major League Baseball because at the same time that we're learning tonight, the PGA Tour is planning to keep the Tour Championship in Georgia. Give me your initial reaction to all of this.
Well, there's so many aspects to it. One that strikes me is that until relatively recently, baseball was not as apt as a sport to weigh in on social issues as perhaps the NBA, the WNBA, the NFL. But that all changed. I mean, last year was obviously a time of reckoning, and it continues. There's a Players Alliance now in baseball, made up primarily of players of color, primarily African-American players, but also widely supported by white players around Major League Baseball. So there are still some people who are going to say, stick to sports, stick to sports. But as we've discussed before, Don, there is a long history of athletes using their platform to register a point of view and to be, in many cases, effective and in some cases even profound. The question is going to be going forward on a case-by-case basis. Is this always the right sort of approach? There may be some people who are in agreement overall, have some differences with some aspect or differences with the approach. You know, Stacey Abrams has said she has mixed feelings about it. You can understand how the Atlanta Braves feel about it. There are people who feel that this is taking some economic opportunity away from those who would benefit from having a big event like an All-Star game, and some of those people are relatively lower on the economic ladder. So I understand those objections, but the larger point that's being made here is that, as Daniel Dale pointed out about an hour ago with you, yeah, you can claim, as Governor Kemp did, that there are certain provisions within this bill that will enhance access to voting. But in the overall, on balance, it actually restricts voting, and it's clear that it will most negatively impact people of color and people at the lower end of the economic scale. And so this is what baseball has decided to do. Now, this is also different when you talk about the PGA Tour, you talk about the Masters next week. The Masters is only in one place at one time. Baseball can move its All-Star game, and it will, to someplace else. So these players are still going to play in an All-Star game.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you brought up what Daniel Dale said because, you know, I've been reading a lot about what's happening with the voter laws in Georgia. And I think the main thing that people have to remember, right, there's a lot of misinformation going around and half-truths, and we know that happens. But the main thing people should remember is that the impetus of this, it was a lie about the election that it started from. Now, it may enhance hours in some places. It may take certain things away, but it was built initially on a lie, and we must keep that in mind. So we have to start from the truth with this. Let me ask you about the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, also Martin Luther King III, Dodgers owner Magic Johnson, LeBron James as well. They have ownership. LeBron James has an ownership stake in the Boston Red Sox. They're all tweeting that they support the move. What do you say to people who think that this is cancel culture or baseball being too, you know, quote, woke? I know those are catchphrases, and I hate little catchphrases, but what do you know what I'm saying?
They're catchphrases, and they're sort of an intellectual get-out-of-jail-free card. Governor Kemp, who deserves some credit for standing up to President Trump's lies in a forthright way after the election, nonetheless invoked this bogus thing about cancel culture and woke culture. I'm not saying that those aren't legitimate complaints. In fact, there's something very illiberal about woke culture. Cancel culture is real, and people of common sense and compassion across the political spectrum should speak out against it because it very often makes no sense at all, and it's not proportionate and very often hurts innocent people. Okay, fine. But what does this have to do with being woke or cancel culture? It's just a buzzword that appeals to certain people on the political spectrum, and it's used in this case to try and dismiss the legitimate grievances that led Major League Baseball to remove the game from Atlanta.
Very well put. So, Bob, listen, athletes and activism always gone hand in hand. We know that. Baseball in particular. I mean, you think the greats like Jackie Robinson, Roberto Clemente, Hank Aaron, sadly, who just passed not long ago. The MLB is planning to celebrate Aaron's life and career during the All-Star Weekend. By the way, there is plenty of precedent for athletes and even leagues to take a stand. This isn't something that's new. I think what's new here is maybe professional athletes are feeling more empowered.
Yeah, they're feeling more empowered. Social media has something to do with it. People are more inclined to express their point of view. Yeah, there is, as you said, a very long history, a noble history in many cases, of athletes using their voice. And this is one example. I said earlier, though, Don, I think going forward, it has to be on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
This seems to make sense to me. It's a shame that they can't honor Hank Aaron in the year of his death, in the year where in the city in which he broke Babe Ruth's record and where his legacy resides. That's a shame, but baseball will still honor him wherever the All-Star game winds up being played. But I'm just saying this, going forward, every particular gripe isn't necessarily best addressed by a boycott. Mm-hmm. And we have to recognize that people of good faith, let's say within a baseball clubhouse, teammates, people who have great feeling for one another, they don't all necessarily see every issue exactly the same way. So I think, as I'm saying, I guess I'm repeating myself here, it's a case-by-case basis, but I think that there's a very good case to be made for what baseball has decided to do here. Plus, there's this. There was corporate pressure. There were going to be corporations and possible sponsors that were going to object to this. And there were players who had already said, we won't play in the game if it remains in Atlanta. And Dave Roberts, who is the manager of the National League team because the Dodgers won the World Series, Dave Roberts had said he wasn't sure about whether or not he would manage the game in Atlanta.